have Dr. Amy introduce you,
Yes.
and you'll say a few words, and you're the final words before us to go. So movie can start.
Try not to stumble through them too much.
Yeah, enjoy the show, something like that. Yeah.
And I'm curious, is it what's protocol for speaking? Is it mask off while I'm speaking, or
I take it off to speak. I do too.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Get on you.
Yeah, because you're going to be up here by yourself. So
I'm good with
yeah.
it. I just want to.
Yeah, it's hard for me. I'm
I don't want
asthmatic
people
too.
to be like,
Yeah, so in class I actually stepped way back and I had to take it off because I'm like I can't breathe because I'm trying to.
Oh no.
Yes, and I'm very like this when I'm speaking.
sure. Okay, I picked
So-
that up already.
So yes, but again, we have the VIP space, so feel free to grab sandwich, water, whatever you need. We're here for you.
No.
What time officially are we?
We're going to start at 6, so we got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Okay.
All right, will do.
Okay?
Yep.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah, go
You
eat. Go
just want to
eat.
sit in the front?
Yes, so grab whatever. You can actually, if you want to take these 3 seats, so you're right here. But if you want to move later, that's fine. Yeah.
Perfect.
We wanted to make sure to section it off for you. Be beautiful. Be beautiful. Okay. Whew. Yeah. All I need is a pen. These are my notes. Beth, at some point I want to go ahead and get Mr. Miller out here with his children and they can pick whatever seat they want.
Okay. Yeah, they're in.
Let's find out where he wants to sit and we'll get him set up. And I need a pen too. Yes, I need. Hold on. That's a hit me one. Thank you. Okay.
I'm gonna sit up right here. I'll spy her.
These first 3. Yes. They want these first 3. Okay, so go. Okay.
Why are people in the?
Huh? That's no question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Is that wrong? Where is it?
Okay. I just need a water.
Cool guy.
What happened? course it is. Hello, hello, everyone. How are we doing on this? I believe it's a Wednesday. My weeks are kind of blurring. The days are kind of blurring. Thank you, thank you. Well, good evening, and welcome to San Jose State University. And I like to say also, not only San Jose State University, but I have to say San Jose State in San Jose, California, USA, because we do have some individuals that follow the Institute that are abroad. So thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Akilah Carter-Francique, and I serve as the Executive Director for the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change. In January 2017, SJSU launched the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change with a momentous town hall event featuring current and retired athletes and journalists discussing race relations in sport. Our long history of athletes, coaches, and alumni who have blazed new trails and moved from words to action make our university the natural home for such an institute. Why? Because the legacy of equity and social justice is part of SJSU's DNA. The university was founded on education for all and provides a voice for those who may otherwise remain silent. For example, 54 years ago, Tommie Smith and John Carlos, two San Jose State students, gained international attention as they stood atop the men's 200-meter podium for the 19th Olympiad in Mexico City, Mexico, to receive their third and first place medals. This moment was captured live on television as both men stood with head bowed and black glove fist raised to reflect the leadership efforts of Dr. Harry Edwards and Ken Noel, architects of the Olympic Project for Human Rights. They stood as global champions to stage an international protest of persistent and systemic violation of Black people's human rights in the United States. They stood to expose America's historical exploitation of Black athletes as political propaganda tools in both the national and international arenas. They stood to promote the need to establish a standard of political responsibility among Black athletes vis-a-vis the needs and interests of the Black community, and to devise effective and acceptable ways by which athletes could accommodate the demands of such responsibilities. And they stood to make the Black community aware of the substantial hidden dynamics and consequences of their sport involvement. This information can be found, of course, in Dr. Harry Edwards' The Revolt of the Black Athlete. These two men stood up to demand change, but they did not stand alone. On that same podium was Peter Norman, an Australian athlete and second-place medalist. Norman stood in solidarity with Smith and Carlos with an OPHR button pinned on his left chest. He immediately understood the urgency of their cause, their experience, and the needs to use the Olympic podium to amplify the Olympic Project for Human Rights demands and the lived experiences and systemic racism that plagued America. Smith, Carlos, and Norman lives would be forever changed because of that moment of protest. Their legacy is etched in history. Their legacy is a significant part of the fabric of SJSU and memorialized on this campus with a sculpture that was actually lobbied by a group of SJSU students to promote their sacrifice, their heroism, and their courage. The Institute of Sport, Society, and Social Change honors our legacy and continues the dialogue about athlete activism and the influence of sport in affecting positive social change. As our nation confronts and explores deeply complex social issues, it is critical that we continue to challenge the boundaries of sport and activism. Sport offers the occasion to pose big questions, not just of athletes, but also of ourselves, and provide enlightened perspectives. Hence, the Institute for Sport, Society, and Social Change amplifies and embodies that motto of words to action. So, with that said, I would say that their salute was part of the wave of athlete activism that fought for dignity and respect, a salute that I would argue was inspired by the culminating experiential efforts of Black athletes and teams featured in today's film screening, The Loyola Project. So, before I get any further, I want to take a moment to recognize our partners in this event. We have Dr. Travis Boyce, coming to us from the Department of African American Studies, and Jamal Williams, who is just numerous titles, that will share a little bit of our Transforming Communities initiative that we have here at SJSU. So, Dr. Boyce.
Good evening, everyone. And first of all, I must say, I'm extremely thrilled to be here. 2 years ago, I interviewed at San Jose State University when the pandemic started. In fact, it was the day campus closed. Today, I stand first time in front of students because now I'm a department chair. So this feels so weird, but it feels very, very wonderful to be in front of lots of students today. So thank you, everyone. So on behalf of the Department of African American Studies, I am pleased to welcome you all to this very important film screening. Tonight's documentary screening should serve as a lesson and the telling of truth, no matter how comfortable it is. Today, we live in a dire moment in our country where there are attempts to change the past. There is political pressure forcing public schools to curtail the teaching of factual racial history and how it has impacted the present. Today, parents can remove their children from Black History Month curriculum. State legislators throughout the country are considering or passing draconian laws that curb or ban the teaching of race in schools. And school districts are considering banning or have already banned books by Black authors or on topics that address systemic racism. As chair of African American Studies at San Jose State University, I am opposed to these new restrictions and attacks on Black African American history. Such obstructive rules not only undermine Black history, but also chisel away at the foundations of our nation, which is democracy. I strongly advocate for teaching truth. Education that is based on historical and empirical evidence and not selective. Schooling that is inclusive for the full African American experience. And finally, the instruction that debunks revisionist racist history. Tonight's film screening featuring the Loyola University men's 1963 basketball season embodies the values of the community of scholars which is us, who should always seek the truth. For all in attendance, and again, I'm looking at students here, especially you students, here's my homework assignment for you tonight. And I want you to turn it in, WSQ 216 tomorrow up in the office. Here's my challenge to you all, and I was being sarcastic. Number one, seek truth. The 1963 Loyola men's basketball season is a compelling story, but there are other stories to tell. And I see future scholars in this audience that can tell those other stories. Number two, read banned books by Black authors. Read books that address the Black American experience. Read books whose topics address systemic racism. And finally, number three, and again, I hope to see you all. I'll be in my office tomorrow morning at 9. Finally, if you enjoy topical issues surrounding African Americans in the sporting world, there is a home for you in African American Studies. We offer 3 sports classes: AFAM 155A, the triumphs and trials of the Black athlete in the U.S., 1850 to 1999. Dr. Akila Carter-Francique, I put you on the schedule to teach that this fall. AFAM 155B, we'll offer that next spring. The triumphs and trials of the Black athlete in the U.S., 2000 to the present. And then finally, AFAM 158, race, sport, activism, and social movements. That is our new Area F Ethnic Studies course. So for those who are seeking their ethnic studies requirement, you can fulfill it right here in a sports class at FAM 158. It also must be noted, we offer a BA in Liberal Arts and African American Studies, a minor in African American Studies, as well as a minor in Black Women's Studies. Additionally, we have a new major. You can major in African American Studies and stay for your 5th year. You don't have to be a 5th-year senior. You can stay for a 5th year and get a Master's of Art in Teaching. And that will qualify you to teach history, social science, ethnic studies, and the truth in California public schools. As the chair of African American Studies, thank you for all attending and enjoy the screening, and I'll be in my office at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bye.
What's up, everybody? Good to see so many faces, and for those of you all watching live stream, thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jamal Williams. I currently serve as the Director of Advocacy for Racial Justice, which is located in our Community and Government Relations Division in Institutional Affairs. That basically means I sit on the 5th floor of Clark and never see any people. But what my role is, right, we think about racial justice, we think about how are we thinking of our communities that have been oppressed. How are we atoning for that as an institution? I want to first thank Dr. Akilah Carter-Francique for bringing this film and helping to get this film to our campus. Her and Dr. Boyce are two of my colleagues that I admire tremendously, and I have a privilege and honor to work with them. I think, so I'm here to I helped co-sponsor this event. We have a series called Transforming Communities, a Movement to Racial Justice. And we think about what that means, right? How are we moving towards racial justice? We talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but racial justice to me is pushing that boundary to say that historically, as Dr. Boyce talked about, and through history, we've seen our communities be terrorized and oppressed, and we owe, right? We owe for that. We have mistakes. We have mistakes that need to be atoned for. We have injustices that need to be atoned for. And this film to me highlights that the present and the past aren't that far connected. We have Mr. Miller here to talk about his experience from this team, and he's still alive, right? So when people try to say that it was slavery, that after slavery ended and justice was over, we know that we can point to our grandparents, our parents even, my mom was born in the 50s, point to them living under Jim Crow and pre-civil rights, right? So this film really speaks to how athletes in the 40s and 50s and 60s and earlier than that carried the torch to push racial justice, right? To push equity, to fight for inclusion, to fight against oppression. And the fact that we sit here on a campus that was graced with the presence of Tommie Smith, John Carlos, and Dr. Harry Edwards only makes it that much more meaningful as to why we would show this film. So keep an eye out in November. Our series, Transforming Communities, a Movement to Racial Justice, is one that bridges community and campus and our fight for how we make an equitable San Jose and an equitable Santa Clara County. And I look forward to having you all participate in programming. If you have ideas, you can always reach out to us, and you can always participate because there's something for everybody to be able to do in this fight, especially as we see how society is continuing to push back against the fight for equality and against the fight for equity and liberation. Last thing, what Dr. Boyce talked about in terms of majoring in African American studies, I am here to say, you hear a lot about when you go to college, you gotta only major in certain areas because that's how you get paid. I have my bachelor's degree in women's studies. I have my master's degree in social work, and I currently work in institutional affairs as an administrator in higher education. I feel like I make a pretty good living to help provide for my wife and 2 daughters. But what I love the most is I get to continue to work on behalf of my community, on behalf of the Black community, and on behalf of communities of color that need voices, that need people to fight for them. Follow what you're passionate about, and if making change in the world is where you see yourself, the money will come, the joy will come, and the passion will come. So I implore you all to just continue to seek those opportunities, continue to seek that knowledge, and continue to be part of the change that we can make in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boyce. Thank you, Jamal Williams, for everything that you do on this campus and for continuing to keep me in your care as we do this journey together. I want to take a quick moment to thank some amazing folks that are here. Thalia Agnos, one of our board members for the Institute and just does all amazing work here at the university, working with our students in so many ways. We got our football team here and their leadership. I want to say thank you. You can give them a hand clap. It's okay. It's okay. Our basketball teams are here with their coaches. Thank you. Thank you. My students that are from African American Studies 158 are also here in the building. And then our partners, our affinity partners, the Block, Emerald Green, I believe, I don't know where she's at, she may be out there and about, but our Black Leadership Opportunity Center as well, and all those that work with us. I'd also like to thank our amazing interns with the Institute for the Sports Society and Social Change. If you're here, give a shout out, get a wave. They're probably working right now, so thank you. And I have to thank these two people that keep me going. Dr. Amy August, our assistant director for the Institute, who is also an assistant professor here on campus as well. Some of you may be taking her classes. And Beth Doyle, our executive assistant for the Institute, who, again, keeps me together. So thank you, both of you, for all that you do. I want to take a quick moment and a pause to recognize and memorialize Lawrence Fann. We just lost him, so if we can have a moment of silence. Okay. He did a lot. I just saw him about a couple weeks ago, so it's a hard one. I wasn't here long, but at the same time, he did make a difference, at least for me. And I know he's been, had a lot more meaning for some of you all. So my condolences to all of those. So what we're here for, again, welcome again to the Loyola Project. SJSU is on the map as one of the 63 for 63 screening campuses to share the college athlete experiences of the Loyola University Ramblers men's basketball team. In 1963, at the height of the civil rights movement, the Loyola Ramblers of Chicago broke racial barriers and changed college basketball forever. Now, nearly 60 years later, this legendary team is re-examined by Loyola basketball player and co-captain Lucas Williamson. Woven together with archival footage and modern-day interviews, this captive story continues to provide inspiration in the fight for equality. There is so much more to say about this team and this moment in time, but I believe the film will speak for itself. So with respect to Lawrence Fann as the keeper of memories here at SJSU, I'm thrilled to say that we also have a memory keeper here. I'm thrilled to say that we are joined this evening by number 42 guard for the 1963 NCAA championship team, Ron Miller. He and his family, thank you, are here tonight to watch the film with us. And then after the screening, please stay and join us, as we like to call it, for a sport conversation for change. Just a few questions of Q&A. And Mr. Miller will answer a few of our audience questions too, so please bring those with you. So without further ado, here to introduce the Loyola Project is the headline sponsor from Northwestern Mutual, Doug Miller, the managing director of Northwestern Mutual San Jose.
Different Miller. Not the important one today. Hi, everyone. My name is Doug Miller. I'm the managing director here in San Jose for Northwestern Mutual. We believe that stories matter. They inspire us. They challenge us. Stories remind us of who we are and who we can become. That's why Northwestern Mutual is proud to be a major sponsor of this film produced by the award-winning O'Malley Creedon Productions and to present the 63 for 63 screening series throughout the U.S., Canada, and obviously to this wonderful university. By sharing this story, one rarely told in nearly 60 years, we hope you as students, faculty, and our members of our community can watch and discuss the remarkable journey of the 63 Loyola Ramblers, how they were groundbreaking then, and why this story is relevant now. These are important conversations. We realize they may be difficult for some, but we believe sharing this story about race, leadership, and allyship is an important first step in building a better tomorrow. While we are all imperfect, we owe it to ourselves and our future generations to be better. It's a commitment our company has made intentionally over the last 10 years through our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, and it's one our office has demonstrated locally and will continue to build on. On behalf of Northwestern Mutual, we are grateful you are all here to see the film and start the conversation.
They call it March Madness for a reason. And every tournament is better with an underdog, right?
The hottest thing in Chicago sports right now isn't the Cubs, the Sox, the Bulls, or the Blackhawks.
Here comes the player of the year, the NBC rises.
It's the Loyola Ramblers.
And the dream is alive.
But our journey was more important than the buzzer beaters.
The three, yes!
With every round we advanced, we were reminded of our past.
Loyola Chicago controls the tip.
Egan in behind us. Turnaround jumper's good. Gary made it first basket. He made it. He might do it.
When you study the early days of basketball, Loyola Chicago sticks out. The youth of America, they need to know what that generation went through, and they need to carry the baton.
Jerry Harkness was the captain of that Loyola team and joins us now. What a pleasure it is to meet you, sir.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
Custer looking for help. Gets it. Williamson. Down. Count it.
My name is Lucas Williamson. I was a freshman in 2018 when the Loyola Ramblers made it to the Final Four. For the first time in 55 years. We were always told how the 63 team made history. But it was in the forgotten details that I found a deeper connection.
Our absolute and unshakable stand for segregation of the races at all levels.
This is not 200 years ago. These are our fathers and our grandfathers that have gone through this. This was more than a game. This was history.
It's time the rest of the world hears their whole story. About those who changed the game by playing it their way. The story of any great team begins with the coach. And in this case, a day he would never forget.
It is very hard for me to think back to that day in 1959. I was in nursing school at Loyola And I came out of class the one day, and it was just a regular kind of autumn day. My dad was George Ireland. He was the Loyola University basketball coach. There was something different about Dad that day. I don't know if something happened at practice, at school, but I walked over towards Dad's office and I looked up and I thought, well, what on earth can that be? And it was a hanging effigy of my father. I thought, how could someone do that to my dad?
There were chants, get rid of Ireland, we need a new coach.
Those students were totally unhappy. They wanted him out. His job was in jeopardy because he was losing.
We played hard, but we didn't have a lot of talent. He had to start bringing new players in.
George Ireland had to confront all this stuff. He knew if he kept going the way he was going, he was done as a coach. The one thing about basketball is all you need is that backboard and hoop and a ball. In cities where there's a big population, not much space, well, it's a perfect game.
The best players in the country were from Harlem. They were playing a style of basketball that was up-tempo and fast-paced.
One of the best ways that I've heard it described is old school basketball is played on the floor and modern basketball is played in the air.
It felt like the early style of basketball was like some sort of exercise in calisthenics, you know, people stretching, and there wasn't very much athleticism to it.
George Ireland was losing, teams weren't very good. We're playing staid, feet in the mud, in concrete basketball, and it's time to change. These black players were changing the game, and they were making it so exciting.
This was a time when superstars were heavily recruited. Wilt Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, everybody knew who these guys were. A lot of coaches wanted them. But for the next tier of players down, black guys who were merely excellent basketball players, nobody wanted them.
For the black athlete, the landscape of these kids playing on university campuses or in the NBA just wasn't there. George Ireland was thinking about job security. He just wanted to win, and he didn't care who you were.
My father, Jerry Harkness, was born in Harlem, New York, and he lived in very harsh conditions in the projects. He's ultra competitive. And I've always wondered, where did that competitive drive come from? The resilience.
As a child in the 1940s, Jerry remembers his own father returning home from the war a hero. But the fanfare faded, and soon he was just a young black man trying to build a life.
He did everything to try to get work. The more Italian and Irish come in, the less work he would have. He could not take that pressure, and he left us. My mom was a go-getter, and she pretty much had to be when my dad left. And I could see her really trying to keep it all together.
The financial stress was overwhelming. At one point, his mother had a mental breakdown and admitted herself into Bellevue Hospital.
When she got out, I looked her in the eyes. I knew that we were going to be all right. She said, I'm going to get a job. We're going to make it. We're not going to depend on anybody but the three of us. To see her go through what she went through, I said, if she can do things like that, I can make it.
Young Jerry loved playing basketball on the streets of Harlem, but he never figured he was good enough to make his high school team. To him, the game was an escape. And when he'd save up a quarter, he'd go practice alone at the Y.
I could still see myself bouncing back and forth, and then going up for the shot. Saying, good, we win. All of a sudden, a guy hit me on my shoulder. And he said, hey, you're pretty good. My eyes got wide, my mouth jumped open. It was my hero. Jackie Robinson. So when a guy like that tells me I'm not that bad, maybe he's right. I said, I'm going out for the team. My coach, he asked me, are you set for college? I said, no, I don't have any offers. He said, we're gonna work on that. George Allen was coming up to Harlem to watch the ball players. My coach told him, there's a guy here that doesn't have the recognition the other players have because he only played 1 year. Why don't you give him a chance? So I was trying to impress this guy like he was the man that had my future, because this was pretty much my last chance. If I don't get this, I'm finished.
And that was the beginning of Jerry Harkness.
With Jerry joining the Ramblers, Coach Ireland developed a whole new vision for his team.
Jerry was a speedster.
My father was a great track athlete prior to becoming a basketball player.
We had to run 2 miles every day before practice because of Harkness, because he loved running.
I remember one coach said, put the ball on the floor, now pick it up. Jerry Harkness just scored a bucket.
Jerry was kind of in command. You could see the growth that was happening.
And that was the best season he had had in about 5 or 6 years. That saved him. And then we came along.
Ireland took me to a St. Rita's game, and I'm looking at the game and I said, I know why he got me here. He didn't tell me who he was scouting, but I was looking at these brothers, the center and the forward. They were 6'10". They were tough. At the end of the game, he said, what do you think of the little guard?
I was from St. Rita High School, born in Chicago. I loved basketball because I was good at it.
I said to myself, this guy is not a ball player. I was wrong about that.
Don't let Jack Egan's size fool you. He's incredibly athletic.
Jack Egan is no nonsense. He knows what he wants, and he is going to get it.
And it's important that you are not going to be intimidated. I needed some physical contact with the other team, even though it was basketball. I think I was fouled more often than anybody else.
Les Hunter and Vic Rouse both came from Nashville, Tennessee. I've heard Vic and Les be referred to as a package deal.
Mr. Ireland did not recruit Les Hunter. He recruited Vic Rouse. Vic Rouse said to him, if I come to your school, can Les come with us? He said, of course. He didn't realize he had a diamond.
Les Hunter may have been the most talented player on the team.
Vic and Les were the bigs. They brought that menacing, athletic height. Ronnie Miller came from New York, a very similar area that my father came from.
When Coach met my mother the first time, he completely ignored me. He promised that any kid that went to his school for 4 years would graduate.
George Ireland gave his sales pitch to the parents, not to the kid. The kid's looking to play big-time basketball. He probably wasn't going to go to Loyola University.
I was probably the best defensive player on the team, so I could guard someone that was bigger than me.
You had a group of extremely talented freshmen.
I had never played with such talented players before in my life.
I knew we had something special.
We lost one game as freshmen, and the word kind of spread throughout college basketball that Loyola had this excellent freshman class. Well, we move up to the varsity. The reality of big-time basketball kind of hit me in the face for the first time.
There was an unwritten rule that racialized who played.
How many black players can be played on the court at one time? 1 at home, 2 when you're away, and 3 when you're in a pinch. You need that little extra oomph. And it's not written anywhere. That's just kind of what the coaches knew.
The coaches, if they didn't want to put black players on the floor, they wouldn't have recruited them to begin with. But American higher education was overwhelmingly segregated. Your student body is 98% white. The faculty is 99% white. The alumni are 99.5% white. How many black guys can you put on the floor to represent this lily white institution before you're going to run into blowback? How far could they go?
I value my job, I value my reputation, so I'm not going to push the system. I wonder how many coaches were just simply complying with the status quo.
Coach Ireland was careful. He'd bend the rule, but never break it. He consistently played 3 black starters at a time, but fearing the reaction of fans and university donors, he never played a 4th.
How George Ireland played us was when Jerry or Les Hunter would be in foul trouble or needed a break, I would go in for one of them. So I played, but I was not allowed to start, and he'd followed that the whole year.
These athletes were marginalized, and they didn't have the same privileges as their white teammates did. And it was openly practiced. It was openly practiced, and we didn't have any laws to protect individuals from this kind of behavior. In the North, Jim Crow segregation was practiced and was an unspoken rule, but not the law. But Jim Crow was the law in the South.
My absolute and unshakable stand for segregation of the races at all levels.
Ross Barnett was the governor of Mississippi at the time, rabid segregationist.
You gotta understand, Mississippi was incredibly racially volatile. If you even suggested something that included integration, it could be life-threatening. It was that bad.
In his fight to preserve segregation in the early 1960s, Governor Barnett made a special target out of state sports, denouncing any competition between white and black athletes. One team falling under his rule were the Mississippi State Bulldogs, led by Coach Babe McCarthy. For 3 of the previous 4 seasons, Mississippi State won the SEC championship, earning a spot in the NCAA tournament. And each time, Coach McCarthy did as he was told by the governor and turned it down.
We grew up doing what we were told to do. To not be able to go to the tournament, the attitude of some of the guys was, why do we even play? We only wanted to go for one reason, and that was to compete and be the best we could be.
When you think about Mississippi, you have to remember that the world was different, the country was different, and we had to deal with things differently. Racism in sports was not a new thing. It was a part of the life that we lived.
In 2001, I was a grad student at Loyola as an oral historian, and I started talking to the players, and I started hearing about their experiences. And I tied that into the context of what was happening in Chicago, because Chicago was then and is now quite a segregated city. What was it like for these guys?
One of the most surprising things that I have found out is things that were going on in the minds of my teammates that I did not know was going on in their mind then. In particular, someone who I'm very close to, Jerry Harkness. When I first met him, he was very standoffish. For more than a year, we had no relationship, other than on the basketball court. If he was in the locker room, I wouldn't acknowledge him.
Jack Egan actually played my mother's high school in basketball, which was a black team, and the kids from St. Rita treated my mom's school terribly.
She told me that St. Rita's was racist and they would throw garbage cans at you. I just drew a conclusion on him early on.
I grew up in a neighborhood that was all white. It was mostly Irish, Polish, and Italian.
Marquette Park was known as the neighborhood that most vehemently resisted the housing initiatives that Martin Luther King came to Chicago to promote. It was a place where blacks were not welcome. You could be chased down and even beaten.
I've been in many demonstrations all across the South, but I can say that I have never seen, even in Mississippi and Alabama, mobs as hostile and as hate-filled as I've seen here in Chicago.
When I would go home from Loyola University to go back to my neighborhood on the South Side, a lot of my friends had the same kind of notion that the black players on the team needed me because I was the brains of the outfit. You know who is? Les Hunter.
There's always been stereotypes about black athletes, that they are all athlete, very little smarts.
African American players were described as tremendous athletes, a physical specimen, whereas a lot of the white players were described as crafty, smart. You didn't have to be that aware to know what they were trying to say.
Of all the players at the center of this story, I never had the chance to meet Les Hunter or Vic Rouse. Vic died in 1999, and Les passed away during the making of this film. In many ways, Les and Vic embodied Loyola at their best. Les was the team's top player, and Vic was their top student. And when Les missed a shot, Vic was there to tip it in. For me, team chemistry is everything, but you have to earn that trust. That was true for Jack and Jerry. But in Les and Vic, the Ramblers always had an example to follow.
The program had been under fire. I saw an opportunity to be a part of the resurgence. You have Loyola that no one had ever paid attention to before. If we're going to compete nationally, what we have to do is get past race.
We weren't ranked. We weren't a team that people were looking at. We were an independent school, so we weren't the preseason pick for anything.
In the 1961-62 season, Ireland no longer had to rely on Jerry's speed alone. Now, his whole team could run.
Almost immediately, we developed this style of a rebound, a pass, and a basket.
Get down and score before the defense had a chance to set up. That's all it was. And that's run and gun basketball.
Ireland believed in playing his starters a long time.
In the 61-62 season, the team consisted of Egan and a guy named Mike Gavin, Jerry Harkness, Les Hunter, and Vic Rouse. Ireland's coaching style with that team was just standing aside and letting them run. His genius as a coach was to just let them play their game.
In the pros, they call it a motion offense, where someone is always moving. If you didn't stay with us, we would score an easy basket.
The Ramblers had some games in the South, and they ran into some of the hard truths of U.S. race relations.
The famous trip to New Orleans, where George Ireland at the last minute told us that we would not be able to stay together as a team.
The black ball players stayed in Algiers in private homes, while the white players stayed in New Orleans in hotels.
And he said he didn't know about it until the last minute. And I never believed that. We land in New Orleans, and the black guys, all of us jump into a cab. And Ireland gets in the cab with us. And it was a black driver, and he said, "Sir, you're gonna have to get out of my cab. It's against the law for a white person to drive in a cab with black people." And Ireland said, "Well, I'll pay the fine if you get stopped." driver said, "You don't understand. It's not to fine. I will go to jail." That's how bad it was in 1962.
When we played Loyola of New Orleans, the shock hit us. They had a roped off section for coloreds.
You couldn't talk back, you couldn't fight back, there was nothing you could do about it.
But you could express that anger by taking it out on the other squad. The court was an equalizer.
After the game, the black players went off to Algiers, and I can honestly say that was by far the best trip that we had. We had no curfew parties that night, and the people in the community were so proud of us, they treated us like kings.
They sent us 2 brand new Pontiacs to drive. We had a great time, and we felt so sorry for the white guys.
But in contrast, what it took us to get to that point, I felt offended by some of the things that occurred.
After the game, Ireland made headlines denouncing New Orleans' segregation laws, vowing that the team would never return. But just a day later, the truth came out. Prior to Loyola's trip, another school in New Orleans, Xavier University, offered to house the entire team. This rare break from the Jim Crow laws governing the city would have allowed all the white and black players to stay together as usual. But for reasons that were never made clear, Ireland declined and chose instead to keep the team segregated. When I heard this story from the players, I couldn't believe it. It's crazy to me that any coach would choose to separate their team anywhere for any reason. It's not just unsafe, it's bad strategy. Your team is your family.
We had to deal not only with the racism of the South when we would travel down there, we also had to deal with it to some degree right here at our home court.
When you think about the Loyola story, you inevitably come to a very complex topic.
We all kind of knew our place. It doesn't sound right when you say that. It sounds terrible when you say that. I just mean that as people, we kind of knew what we had to do to survive.
They wanted us to be available as tokens. For example, if they had a party on campus, they wanted us to stand on the walls, and be there. But we weren't supposed to dance with the girls, we weren't supposed to talk with the girls. And if they came to us and asked us to dance, we even had Jesuit priests who said, "No, you don't do that."
The priests had a job, and part of their job was making sure the students were safe. And unfortunately, the black male body has often been considered, just by existing, unsafe.
I guess I expected to hear the 63 guys face discrimination when traveling south, or maybe even on the court by opponents. But to know they were also disrespected at home makes me furious. And on a call between our 2 teams, we got an opportunity to talk about it.
Then I remember, and the other guys will remember this, we could not go to the barber shop right across Sheridan Road. They would not cut black guys here.
You couldn't get a haircut on campus? Like, you had to go somewhere else to get a haircut?
I guess, again, I was blind to what they were experiencing, just assumed everything was great.
In the 60s, we didn't express ourselves because I really don't think we knew how to talk about it.
The average person might look at it and say, that's not racism, but it is.
They're going to have to swallow their discontent. They're going to have to swallow their hurts, because the moment they start making waves, the moment they start asking for things that they know they should have, they're no longer just these wonderfully respectable young men that we would be so happy to have amongst us. There was a mold that they needed to fit. Not the angry team, not the frustrated, They were classy. And oh, look, how acceptable they are. That might be why they're not loud and they're not vocal.
It makes you feel completely isolated. It is a very hard thing to face. What you say is nothing, what you think is nothing. That's what it feels like to be discriminated against. You're invisible. You don't exist. You don't exist.
Toward the end of the season, Ron Miller began playing a more prominent role in the team. He was scoring a lot, and at one point, Ireland pulled him aside to tell him why he wasn't starting. And he didn't really tell him. He said, but you understand what it is. And Miller did understand. Ireland didn't want to have the fourth black guy on the court.
It was so obvious to everyone around the team and everyone at Loyola that we should have had 4 blacks starting. You keep in mind, I'm coming off the bench and I was averaging double figures. So that tells you that maybe I should have been starting.
The one white boy that he was starting over Ron Miller had no business starting, and he knew it, and everyone knew it.
In 1962, Loyola went 21-3, earning a bid to the National Invitation Tournament at Madison Square Garden in New York. With 2 Harlem natives on his team, Ireland saw an opportunity to lure the next generation of local recruits.
We had advanced to the semis playing Dayton. And what really surprised me was that Coach Ireland changed the lineup.
He wanted to start me because he was recruiting heavy out of New York City. Local papers made a big deal that I was coming back to Madison Square Garden. 2 New York kids, me and Jerry Harkness.
So he has to play Miller and he has to play me because we're in New York. So he takes out 6'8", 6'9" Hunter.
He brought Miller in for Les Hunter, best ball player on the team.
Dayton was a hell of a team, and we were getting beat up pretty bad.
Take out Les Hunter and we're smaller, much smaller. It just put us in a bad situation.
Ron Miller was the Ramblers' high scorer in the game, but without Hunter in the lineup, Loyola was just outmatched.
So we lost to them. We had to play another game after that, which was a consolation game, and we played Duquesne University, which was a very good basketball school in those days.
And you have to remember that Mr. Ireland was in difficulty. He could not afford to lose.
Ireland was not trying to be an activist. George Ireland was thinking about winning ball games.
And that was a game where Ireland chose not to play the senior, Mike Gavin, and inserted Ron Miller as the other guard.
He put the best team on the court.
He broke the code.
When we won the consolation game, from there on, he played 4 black guys.
On that historic night, the Iron Five were born. For the Loyola Ramblers, there would be no turning back.
Let me ask you this, do you ever get crank phone calls?
Well, they criticize who he's got on his team. As you know, he has a Negro ball club, and we get letters on that.
Well, that's terrible. The rest of the world could take a cue from on integration is how well these kids get along together on the basketball floor.
That's right.
With his new starting 5 set for the 1962-63 season, there was plenty of fallout for George Ireland and his family. But with his eyes on a national title, the coach had come too far to turn back. Meanwhile, there was another team down south with their eyes on the title.
I was always fascinated about the psychology of the Mississippi State basketball team. You're feeling a lot of pressure if your programs aren't performing well, if you're losing. The irony is that Mississippi State was winning, and the more they won, the more pressure they faced.
Our governor in particular just didn't think we ought to be playing against black players. We never
imagined that we would get to go to the NCAA tournament in '63.
Young people are often a product of a dysfunctional situation, taught things that they shouldn't be taught, and it's not until they actually experience a different set of circumstances that they can appreciate what should be.
In Mississippi, if you opposed Governor Barnett and the racism of Jim Crow laws, you were all but guaranteed a prison sentence. Or maybe even worse, with the state's long history of lynchings. But despite those very real threats, just 100 miles from the Mississippi State campus, there was someone still brave enough to fight back.
The enrollment of James Meredith, the first African American to attend on the campus of Ole Miss. That night, a riot broke out. Hundreds were injured. 2 people died as protesters tried to stop a black man from attending a tax-supported state school.
James Meredith, who was a Mississippi native and a veteran, applied to enter the University of Mississippi Ole Miss. Ross Barnett said that Meredith would enter Ole Miss over his dead body.
His admission caused a riot of such magnitude, the president called out National Guard troops to come put the riot down.
Immediately following the mass panic, the college infirmary was besieged with injured persons, officers, and students.
People died. It's hard to believe that ever happened, but it damn sure did.
As the dust settled after the riots, James Meredith successfully enrolled at Ole Miss, another small piece of progress in the civil rights movement. And while figures like Babe McCarthy were left to grapple with what it meant on his campus, back in Chicago, they were listening too.
Things were starting to change, but not rapidly enough. We would sit up in my room around this radio, listening and cheering for people who were doing things to make a difference.
We were in the middle of the civil rights movement and Dr. King. The emphasis was put on them, but we in the background were making changes too.
We really started the season with not just a good team, but a great team. We had 7 guys who legitimately could start.
They were the highest scoring team in the country that year. They knew exactly what the next step of the other was going to be.
There was something electric that happened to us. We just knew that we were going to be very good.
They were bulldozing teams. No one could stop them.
In retaliation to all of this resistance, they ran up the scores. Send a message. We're good, and we're good at what we do.
Is this the best team you've had in your 12 years as Loyola coach?
Well, Mike, I think this is my best team.
Well, there's no question about it. You certainly do have an excellent team. In fact, you must be ranked 2nd in the nation. George Ireland, how do you think that your Loyola club would make out against Cincinnati?
Well, that's a hard question. We are an offensive team and Cincinnati a defensive team. I would like to play Cincinnati, and possibly sometime we will.
For such a long period of time, we knew that somewhere along the way, we were going to go up against Cincinnati. They were the big dogs. We were the underdogs.
Cincinnati had become a machine, a real machine under the leadership of Ed Jucker.
Cincinnati was the complete opposite of Loyola. Cincinnati had won 2 championships with a very deliberate, slow-down pace. When you talk about a team that wanted to make 4 passes before they took a shot, Cincinnati probably wanted to make 6 passes, something that was not in our DNA at all.
While Loyola was the fastest team in college basketball, no one matched the slow, tactical pace of Cincinnati. At a time when more and more teams experimented with running the ball, Ed Jucker found success by doing just the opposite.
Don't shoot unless you have a good shot. Hold the ball if you need to once in a while. That was before the days of shot clock.
Everyone thought he was crazy until he won his first NCAA championship. They thought he was lucky until he won his second.
When they got ahead of you by 10 points, you were probably toast.
Combined with the talents of Tom Thacker, Ron Bonham, and George Wilson, Cincinnati was set to be the first ever team to win 3 consecutive titles.
We had the best record. I don't know what Loyola was, but they didn't win as many games as we did.
I mean, Cincinnati was the monster. Why would you think that this small Catholic school could beat Cincinnati?
Out of everything I learned about this story, I was most surprised by Cincinnati. Because for all the praise given to Ireland for breaking that unwritten rule, I didn't know that Ed Drucker broke it first, months before Ireland, winning a national championship with 4 black starters in 1962. You might say it was easier for Cincinnati since they were already defending national champs. But I think it's more likely that 4 black starters with a slow, controlled game were less threatening than Loyola's aggressive, fast break players. Whatever the explanation is, these 2 trailblazing teams seem to be on a clear path to the championship. But the season was far from over, and Loyola's future was suddenly uncertain.
Midway through the season, Loyola lost 3 players. One of them left for financial reasons. The other 2 were New York playground guys. They didn't make grades and would have got a lot of playing time had they stayed on the team.
Everyone was understandably shocked when all that happened at once. We had 9 players, and that was it. It was so awkward just to have scrimmages and you have 9 people.
Their absence is one of the reasons that the 5 starters were playing virtually every minute.
The Iron Five were used to playing nonstop, but now, even when Loyola took big leads, Ireland refused to give any of them a break.
Some of the games were complete blowouts. We would still be playing. I mean, we'd be up by 15, 20 points, and he would still have all of us in the game.
We had a 30-point lead at halftime. Man, almost big playing. Never got him.
That starting 5, I think he was nervous when any one of them was off of the floor. And it wasn't that we were incapable of contributing. People don't realize how good we were because they never saw us. We'd be up 35, 40 points. Let's give the first team a break.
I was feeling badly because we had guys on the bench that weren't getting in. And I said, Coach, take me out, I'm tired. He said, stay in.
Trust me, I can tell you, being on the court 40 minutes straight is no joke. To play that fast-paced style every game without a sub, that can break you. And that season, as the exhaustion built on the court, the pressure got to everyone.
We were in New York playing St. John's. Jerry Lang came out and says, George is on the table, he's coughing up blood. You know, he had a bleeding ulcer.
You know, there were times when guys out there on that floor were hurting. They had been injured. Vic Rouse had had a shoulder separation, and they would have to put it back in and tape it up. When you run a team for 30 games, you know, iron wears out. We tried to figure out why certain things happened, why certain things didn't happen. But we loved each other. 5 guys were going to play, and the other 4 were going to be supportive of them.
Worn down, Loyola suffered their only 2 defeats of the season late in the schedule. The struggle for the Iron Five was increasing, but the worst was yet to come.
The game was in Houston, Texas.
To me, we were just going down to play another team. That's how naive and ignorant I was back then. It was a pretty small, confined gym. It didn't take long to realize that it was going to be more than a basketball game.
Things started to unravel.
I believe everybody in the stadium was against us.
The fans were out of control.
Go back home. Get out of here. We're gonna get you.
They use the N-word constantly, threw ice, threw things at us on the court.
The students throwing stuff, I mean, they look like me.
Never having experienced that side of racism, literally they're spitting on us. This is what you guys go through on a daily basis?
I looked to the side, I didn't see police, and I started to worry. There were times during that game that we feared for our lives. It was that bad.
All of a sudden, we heard a loud bang. I swear to God, I thought they were shooting at us. Somebody took a popcorn bag and popped it.
That was one of the worst experiences on the court that we experienced as a team. This is when we talk about Coach George Ireland. To me, he should have known that. He should not have put us in those situations. If he cared, he would not have put us in those situations.
Coach Ireland had a lot of power. And I'm not just talking about the power to play the starters the entire game. He had the power to say, this is a segregated city and things might be a little scary for you, but you're gonna play anyway. And maybe they would have chosen to play anyway. But we don't know that because they didn't have a choice.
Through all the highs and lows of that season, the game at Houston left the most lasting impression on the team. But they won the game, and for the first time ever, Loyola accepted their invitation to the NCAA tournament. The Iron Five were about to face a whole new level of public scrutiny, and there was nowhere to hide from what was coming.
We get the mail. On the outside, it was KKK. You don't belong on the same floor as white players. We're gonna kill you. And I'm gonna tell you, I was scared to death. They know where I live. They're gonna come to the dorm and get me. I called Alan. I said, Alan, you gotta get over here. And he went to the front desk of the dorm. Any mail that comes in for the ball players, give it to me.
My dad would keep the mail from them. He did not want them to read some of the things that were sent. Dad would show it to us at home. I just could not believe any human beings would send stuff like this to 19, 20-year-old kids.
I've heard stories of the letters that he received, but I personally never seen any of the letters. I believe that he did receive letters.
I was never able to get to the letters. In my mind, I had to put the letters out of my book because I couldn't prove them.
There's 3 like this that are all closed up. And up in the corner, it says Loyola, HM for hate mail. The way they were signed, Uncle Tom and KKK, the N-word. He said he wanted me to have it because he knew I would protect it. And he said, someday, this history will be alive again, and maybe then you can show it. He knew it was the wrong thing to do, but he could not let this keep coming to his ball players. I thought, if I can just protect them, who needs to know about this stuff? It happened, it's here, and I promised Dad that I would protect it.
It's tempting to hide the worst parts of our histories, to lock them away, pretend they don't exist. Maybe for Ireland, these letters were seen as a burden on the players, a distraction at the height of their season. Maybe it was easiest to just move past them. But the problem is, Ireland didn't. Among those letters were threats so severe he hired security for his daughters. a protection he never offered his players.
I don't think he thought at all about race relations. I don't think he was interested in race relations. I think George Allen was thinking about himself, his family, and winning basketball games. I always accepted that as a part of the times. I never held that part against him. It was important to him that he was successful, and by being good to us, it made him successful.
Even through the death threats, the Loyola players found a way to stay focused. The NCAA tournament was fast approaching, and Cincinnati was still expected to win it all. Though it looked like the bracket would have one glaring omission.
Mississippi State defeated Ole Miss to clinch the Southeastern Conference Championship, which gave them the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. The next day, Governor Barnett issued a statement that Mississippi State will not be playing in the NCAA tournament.
Personally, I feel it is not for the best interest of Mississippi State University or either of the races.
The governor had issued an injunction.
We will do all we can to the point of arresting you when you get ready to leave the state of Mississippi.
The NCAA had no idea where to put State in their seeding because they didn't know if State was going to be able to make it, even though they had verbally committed.
Mississippi State was given a first-round bye. Their first opponent would be the winner of Loyola versus Tennessee Tech.
People don't realize the amount of pressure that we were under, not only from the KKK and the White Knights, but from our own people. Blacks across the country who were putting their hopes on us, that we had to win because the black community was counting on us.
Jerry said that he had black people calling him saying, hey, you better not lose to those white boys.
Come on, you guys, we're rooting for you. We're rooting for you. We got so roused up that you're gonna be hard to beat. You're gonna be very hard to beat. The first game was against Tennessee Tech, an all-white team. And that poor team, we went up 30, 40, we beat them, and it's still a record. 69 points.
The final score of that game is still the greatest disparity in NCAA history.
I mean, it's just amazing the advantage you have once you're motivated and roused up.
The Ramblers were eager for their next matchup, but with no word from Mississippi State, Loyola had no idea if they'd show up.
Their coaches said we're going. Their president says that we're going. But everybody else in power in the state says, no, you can't. These are guys who were raised to honor authority, to obey their elders.
You know, we faced jail time if we failed to obey the injunction.
The night before the trip, Coach McCarthy did have a team meeting. We talked. He said, here's what we're going to do. We had to leave early the next morning, as early as we could, and we headed out.
The team was going to split into two teams. One was the decoy team.
They sent our trainer and 6 of our players that didn't play a whole lot out to the airport.
They keep the 5 starters and the 6th man back at the dorm room.
There are 2 airports in Starkville, and as a decoy, one group was going to Bryan Field.
They went out there to see if there was going to be an officer to serve the injunction.
In that case, the trainer with the decoys was going to phone back to campus, tell the starting team, don't come to the airport. They had another plane waiting for them at another airport that they were going to take if they had to.
And should 6 be arrested, 6 will end up in East Lansing, Michigan.
It was like Mission Impossible, man.
We were kind of the guinea pigs, okay? I was literally scared to death. But where were we gonna go?
The reserves made it through to the airport. A call was made and they said coast is clear. And the starters, Joe Dan and Red Stroud and Doug Hutt, they went. And they all flew together.
And as soon as the plane left the ground, you could hear the guys all together started clapping and cheering. We're off. We're on our way.
I didn't think they were going to come. And when we got to Michigan, they said Mississippi State is going to play you.
To know that cops are chasing them and that what they're doing is going to create a stir, and then just even getting psychologically ready for an NCAA tournament game, which they had never done before, I'm sure they were probably tapped out.
How many people are going to support us being there? We don't know.
Everything was very quiet. We're all sitting there, you know, about halfway wanting to cry.
And when we got on the floor that night, all of a sudden, the MSU fight song was played. Here we are, a bunch of white kids in opposition to a movement against black athletes, to play something as easy or simple as a basketball game, to walk into a gym of 15, 18,000 people. Wow. Could it really be happening? It's tough.
They had no clue that they would be that welcomed.
Joe Dan Gold was our captain, and he went out to shake hands before the tip-off.
There was no cheering. The place was quiet. Everybody was watching us. You could feel it. I didn't hear anything the referees were saying. I was looking at Joe Dan, and he was looking at me. We both went to shake hands, and the place lit up. Pow, pow, pow.
Cameras just went crazy.
Almost turned into daylight.
I mean, everybody understood how important that moment was. It was captured for the ages.
I said, this is more than a game. This is history.
For our two captains to shake hands and acknowledge the fact that, hey, we're here.
The night would forever be known as the Game of Change. When the final buzzer sounded, Loyola had earned the win, sending them to the Elite Eight, while Mississippi State faced the reality of returning home and the consequences that would be waiting.
I don't know, we could have played a whole lot of games, probably never beaten them. Coach came in, and that's the first thing he said, he popped in that door, boys, you get your head up. He said, y'all have done something that nobody in Mississippi's ever done. You know, y'all have nothing to be ashamed of.
Well, obviously our flight home was a disappointing flight home. Yet, it wasn't disappointing because we had accomplished what we set out to do.
The Mississippi State team didn't know what they would find when they got home. That was the danger. That was the element that they were dealing with. It had to be in the back of their minds the whole time. They get back to Mississippi, and there's a crowd treating them like heroes. You know, the best thing is to win. The second best thing is to lose. That means you got a chance to compete. Without the ability to compete, You got nothing.
Differences of opinion that we have and ill feelings that we have, but basketball and sports can do an awful lot to bring people together.
As the NCAA tournament continued, Loyola defeated Illinois and Duke to advance to the national championship game for the first time in school history. The most anticipated contest of the season, Loyola versus Cincinnati, was set.
The night we beat Duke, what I remember most vividly is Vic Rouse jumping on the bed at 4 o'clock in the morning saying he's going to be looking at his NCAA watch. I remember that vividly because they didn't give out rings at that time, they gave out watches. I don't think any of the guys got to bed till at least 4 in the morning. And that might have been, the guys might have been dragging a little bit.
NCAA championship ball games in the ding-dong dilly of a battle tonight at Louisville, as we will have the Bearcats coached by Ed Jucker against the Ramblers coached by George Ireland of Loyola of Chicago.
For the first time in NCAA history, 7 black starters across both teams took the floor. And in a nationally televised game, the entire country was watching. On Chicago local radio, Loyola's very own announcer, Red Rush, was calling the game. A voice no one would forget by the end of the night.
We are hungry for a championship, so please bring one home to us, won't you?
It was bringing chills to me, to be honest with you, watching it.
We had 150 young nuns there looking at this little black and white TV so we could watch that game.
Probably the audience at the time was pro-Cincinnati. Nobody had won 3 titles in a row.
I guess the excitement starts when you're running out through the crowded area. I could not see anybody that I knew there, but I knew they were there. Okay, there was that many people. It felt as though I've been looking forward to this all my life. I would say more excited, somewhat nervous, but more excited. I just said, we got to get to a good start.
At tip-off, I had this little habit where I always reach down and touch my sock. And that night, I didn't touch my sock, which said to me, I must have been nervous.
The ball's in the air and controlled by Cincinnati's Tony Yates. So the Bearcats have got the ball on the move. He brings the ball over the 10-second timeline. The Bearcats control down here to Bonifos, drives the baseline, jumps, shoots, off, no good. And Wilson stuffs it through. George Wilson went high in the sky and stuffed it through.
We were the best team, without a doubt. Deliberate game, set picks, take our time with the ball.
Right at tip-off, Cincinnati had momentum on their side. Both teams studied their opponent, their styles, tactics, and their biggest threat.
Harkness out to Ron Miller. They're going to try to set the pattern. They're not going in that full court press, incidentally.
Tom Thacker, the best defensive player in college basketball at the time. At the beginning of the game, I said, I'm going to get in his head.
He was going in for what he thought was an easy layup. He thought he had Tom Thacker beat.
Instead of going left, where I know they had scouted me and I go left 90% of the time, I said, I'm going to go right on him.
They're going to try to set the pattern. There goes Harkness driving the baseline, and the ball knocked out of bounds by Tom Thacker, who is on Harkness.
He slapped the ball away. I could not believe what he had just done. Nobody would think of it as being awesome except me. He knocked me out of my game.
From that moment on, he was afraid of Thacker. Thacker was in his head.
Being guarded by Thacker. Harkness goes off the left side, jumps an 8-footer off, no good, and Wilson clears the backboard, backing up underneath.
When I got around him, there's George Wilson. They had a double where they had me boxed in.
Down to Harkness. Harkness has yet to score. We're going to see what happens. He backs up. He always shoots when he does. Let's wait. He turns around, jumps, shoots off, no good, and the ball knocked into the hands of Wilson.
They had all of the things to stop me. They just scouted us very, very well.
Off to Miller to the right-hand side, goes to the baseline, jumps, an 8-footer off, no good. So Ron Miller has got a foul.
We'd had slow starts before, but this night, something is wrong.
With the threat of Jerry Harkness neutralized, Ed Jucker turned his attack on what Loyola relied on most: their speed.
Passing over to Bonham, behind the free throw lane, it is off the iron, no good, and Miller controls it off of there. They slow down that fast break, 9:56 left to go in the first half.
They took away our fast breaks.
We wanted to cut loose all the time. We wanted to get the ball and go and get the ball and go. They didn't take enough shots for us to get going. They were never in a hurry to take a shot.
Thacker way over. Hands it back to Larry Singleton. They have a 7-point lead. When Cincinnati's got that kind of a lead, it's pretty tough.
So they didn't miss a lot of shots. So there were not an opportunity for us to get rebounds. And for some reason, we could not ever adjust to that style. I don't remember having a fast break in the first half.
We just never could get started. And we weren't shooting well. Shooting percentage was terrible.
The Ramblers, a 13-footer up off, no good. Over to Miller, jumping from behind the free throw lane. It is up and short, no good, and Thacker clears it.
How could we miss that many shots? I mean, there were easy shots, there were wide open shots, and we were missing shots.
I knew that we were much better than we were playing. A lot of people were probably watching at home, and we come there and flop.
Everyone on that team was nervous. We were out of sync largely because our leader was not having a good half.
Jerry did not feel confident. If Jerry was not confident, the rest of the team had to wonder what's to become of us.
Miller over to Harkness. He goes down near the baseline. Bonham's on him. Dribbles under, fakes, shoots, and he is knocked down. But getting the ball. Egan sets. He shoots. It is rolling off. No good. Over to Ron Miller. He jumps. He shoots a 6-footer. Rolls off. No good. And the ball is knocked out of bounds. Last touch by Vic Krause. At halftime, the score is 29-21.
The assumption by everybody is that this is a gimme. Cincinnati's got it. It's in the bag.
The first half of the championship game is kind of a blur. I remember Jerry had a very bad game, but so did everyone else. We played the worst game of the year. Of the 4 years that I was around Ireland, I've often thought that George Ireland's greatest achievement as a coach was what he said at halftime. He walks into the locker room and said to us, you know, you just played the worst half of basketball I think we've played all year. And he says, I'm not worried about it. We're gonna go out there the second half and you're gonna play better and we'll win the game. There are other times when we would be winning by 10, 12, 15 points, and he would come into the locker room and he would start throwing things around, telling us how lousy we were playing. But at this moment, that night, he was the complete opposite of all of those. He said, we're better than that. You're better than that. He said, we'll get in the second half. I've often felt that was his finest hour.
The ball is up and controlled by Jerry Harkness over near the sideline. Back to Miller, the ball goes. Back down to Harkness on the right side. Going inside the free throw lane, shoots up, and it goes off to Ross. He scores as he controls the board.
I never heard anyone say they had lost their hope. But if you were watching that game, you had to think things are not going our way, and I don't see how they're going to change.
Bolstered by their coach's confidence, Loyola came out of the half ready to fight, but Cincinnati looked just as strong as they started. With Jerry still held at bay, the Bearcats kept the pace slow, making it even harder to catch up.
Yates has got it over the far side to Larry Singleton. Larry down in the corner to Bonham. He jumps. An 18-footer is up and good. 45-30. Cincinnati leading by 15 points. You wouldn't believe it unless you were here. Here comes.
I'm thinking to myself, how do we make this comeback? How do we do it?
Cincinnati was about the best defensive team in the United States. So how do you overcome that deficit?
It's a long, hard hill to climb, but maybe there's some life in them yet.
And Rouse clears the backboard for Loyola.
Take the deep breath and you wait for your time to hit.
47-34, 13-point lead. Here's Ron Miller going down to the baseline. Jumps, shoots, scores! Going in the lane, backhand pass. It goes to Harkness. The baseline jump off. No good. He can't get it. Rouse gets the rebound. Turn around, jump shot.
It was about 5 minutes to go in the game. I hadn't scored a basket.
Shoots up off, no good, and Leslie Hunter clears it. There they go, Harkness, and the ball is stolen as Harkness passes and stolen by Larry Singleton. Beautiful interception by Larry.
Loyola was battling every possession, but still down 7, every miss made it painfully clear. If Jerry Harkness couldn't score, Loyola was finished.
Jerry had a big dream, had big ideas about his friends at home watching him on TV, how this was going to be triumph of the poor, be triumphant back in New York, and he saw all that slipping away.
I would not have been able to face myself in life because I played so bad. I would have felt bad for the rest of my life. But God has always put me in a situation growing on welfare, nothing to eat. And I think of my mom getting us through, coming out of the hospital and telling us we're going to make it. I realized that all of that drive and determination came from my mom. Ireland put in a different play that Cincinnati had not seen. I felt finally, maybe this is it for me.
Egan into Harkness, turnaround jumper's good! Jerry made his first basket! He made it! He might do it! 48-43! 48-43!
We can win this game. At that point, we can win.
Here's Thacker with that ball. Passing down, intercepted by Harkness. Here goes Jerry, plays it up, and he scores! Harkness scores! Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful! 48-45, 4:16 left to go. Oh, is this a ball game now? Out to Harkness on the left side. He's driving down. He's under, lays it up, and scores! He scores! He scores!
Jerry was the primary reason that we were able to come back and get into the game. Once he heated up, the rest of the team followed suit.
We just started playing harder, much harder.
Look at Hunter get that ball. Miller on the right side, a bounce pass into Hunter. Turnaround layup, and oh, goaltending! Goaltending! They finally called it. It's 51-50.
The crowd started to come around because we started to close the gap.
Here comes Harkness. He lays it up, and it is tipped in by Hunter. 19 seconds, 15 seconds, 16. Singleton's got it, and a foul. Harkness fouled him purposely. He had to do it.
12 seconds to play, and it's Bedlam here in Louisville, Kentucky. 53-52, Cincinnati by one single point, and going to the line will be Larry Singleton.
Larry Singleton was one of the best free throw shooters in the nation. So, you know, when he stepped to the line, my heart sank.
With 12 seconds to go, Singleton will go to the line. If he should miss, they would have time, of course, to go down the court and perhaps take that one shot. And Tom, anything can happen at this point.
I am out there praying as if he hits both, over. No doubt about it. The game is over.
Well, there's one of them. Make it 54-52.
I said, dear Lord, please, please, just give us a chance.
Larry Singleton with owning his second point of the night. And now perhaps he can ice the ball game for them. It's short, and it comes off to Loyola.
Les gets the rebound, perfect position. And as a guy from Cincinnati swipes at the ball, as Les passes the ball to me. And as I catch the ball, I take one dribble and I see Jerry streaking toward the basket. I saw him break. I knew he could get his shot because that's his spot.
Jerry did what he does best. He cocked that left hand behind his head.
I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel the ball leave my hand. If I would have had an air ball, I wouldn't have been surprised. I just let it go.
No good, and Leslie Hunter has got it. To Ron Miller, they got a fast break down to Harkness. He jumps, he shoots. He scores! He scores! He scores! He scores!
Perfect fast break within seconds. And that to me was who Loyola was. That's how we played, just like that.
1 second to go, and we're going into overtime. And the score is all time, 54 to 54. The clock is running with 9 seconds. Harkness takes it. He makes it. It's all tied up.
There was some controversy that Ronnie Miller might have gotten away with a traveling call. That's true. I gotta say it.
There's the run. He did an extra step.
They know what they did. They know what happened.
It was so close that nobody in their mind as a referee are gonna call that.
And there was no question in my mind he walked.
Did he get away with something? Nah. They didn't blow a whistle.
I didn't travel because the ref didn't call it.
And the basket's made, we're into overtime.
It is absolutely a madhouse here, and it's all tied 54-54. Loyola getting 33 points in the second half, Cincinnati getting 25, and Jerry Harkness, who had perhaps his most miserable night in his college career, came back to become the hero to tie it up with 3 seconds to go.
But when David comes up against Goliath, what can he do? There it goes down to Harkness. He's underneath. He lays it up. He scores! He scores! 56 to 54. It's the Dillies as the Ramblers are out in front for the first time in this ball game.
What I remember most about the last 5 minutes was that desperation. Keep crawling until the bitter end, and something good will happen.
Thacker trying to get one inside. He goes to Wilson, and Wilson scores.
Imagine playing an entire game without any break and an overtime. Those guys had no time to rest. They were constantly going. All 5.
They have gone all the way without a substitute. And I'm wondering, Tom Hamlin, if this isn't beginning to wear on Loyola a little bit.
As you get tired, you lose your legs, you lose your shot, a lot of things go south.
Les Hunter takes his shot. It rolls around and goes off. And George Wilson grabs it for the Bearcats.
At one time, one of the guys came out and says, "Chuck, I'm gassed." Well, coach said, "Go out there, keep playing."
Somebody maybe needs a sub, but you don't want to tinker with that moment. No substitutions. That's what it's going to be.
The lead pass intercepted by Ron Miller. Ron Miller intercepted the pass. Now the Ramblers have got it. Action? You better believe it. Miller shoots a 20-footer. Good! Good by Ron Miller.
The final minutes of overtime felt like a tug of war. 2 teams desperate to win, both on the verge of collapse. They'd do anything to score, even if it meant taking a play from the other side.
To Cincinnati, a long pass to Shingleton. He's in the clear. He ties it up. 58 to 58. A minute and a half to go. Egan almost loses it. They'll have to jump for it. Egan and Shingleton, the 2 smallest men on the court, will jump for it.
Jack has no quit in him. The fact that Shingleton was a little taller didn't make a difference.
Shingleton is 5'10", and Egan is 5'9", so Cincinnati with a slight height advantage. Believe me, this is a very important jump.
Jack would fight anybody. I mean, he didn't care who you were. If you had the ball, he's going to fight you to take the ball.
I don't care if the guy was 6'8". That's the way Jack is.
Ball is up and tipped back to Ron Miller. He's got it. Over to Jerry Harkness.
I think it was a misfiring on Shingleton's part because he was up too soon before the ball could be reached. And Jack timed it perfectly. Luck of the Irish.
Back to Egan, 1:15. What would you do? 58-58, would you go for the 1?
I think everyone knew that the idea was to get the ball to Jerry Harkness for the last shot.
So we're going to try to get the ball to Jerry, and he should be taking a shot with 3-4 seconds left, so there's a chance for a tip-in, a rebound, but not an opportunity for them to get a rebound and go all the way down the court. How do we do it?
They're going to go for one. I don't think there's any question about it. 50 seconds, 49, 48. Harkness backing in. He may go. Now he goes back out to Egan. Egan has got the ball. Looking around, over to Harkness, back to Egan. 38 seconds left to go. To Rouse, back to Miller. They're going to go for the one shot, 58-58. And this is a twist. Cincinnati, the team that always holds the ball. They're seeing what it feels like now.
The team that normally held the ball did not know what to do when someone held the ball against them.
Egan over to Harkness. Harkness going inside the lane. Now he goes back out to Miller. 15 seconds. Out to Egan. I guarantee you one thing, they'll give it to Harkness when it's time.
Everybody pretty much thought it would come to me.
Miller's got it. Out to Rouse. 9, 8. Harkness has got it. Here he goes.
And I got the ball, and he knew I was going left, and I knew it. But I didn't feel it. In the corner of my eye, I saw Hunter open, and he could hit that shot.
Threw it to Les. Now we're talking probably 3 or 4 seconds.
I got nervous, not because Les isn't a great shot, but I heard the ball scratch as he took that shot. He scratched it with his fingernails.
It was a good shot to take.
It went off the side of the rim, and then one of the second best, third best moment of my life was seeing Vic push that ball back through the basket.
Off the rim. Rouse gets it, scores. It's over. It's over. We won. We won. We won the ball game. We won the ball game. Oh, we won. Loyola won the ball game. Oh, we won it. We won. 60-58. 60-58. Rouse gets it, scores. It's over. It's over. We won. We won. We won.
We won.
And all of a sudden we heard these voices march down Sheridan Road yelling, "We won, we won, we won." I think they went all the way to Evanston, like at midnight. Oh, so joyous and so joyful.
You just have no idea the pride that I have for those guys.
It was unbelievable. It was good to see the starting five get the reward that they had earned.
George, how does it feel to be a national champion of the NCAA? All right.
It's the first time we brought a team to the tournament, and we just said, look, we're having a poor first half. I know you can beat them. Let's go out and give it to them.
And that is the championship for 1963 and one of the most unbelievable comebacks of all time.
America was sitting witness to this evolution of the game by 7 out of 10 African Americans starting in that game.
Loyola did what they set out to do, but their win represented so much more. The end of the tournament marked the beginning of their legacy, one that shaped the sport and their lives for years to come. The Ramblers returned home to Chicago as champions that March of 1963, the first school in the state of Illinois to ever win a Division I national title.
How do you feel after your 4 years at Loyola?
Well, I feel tremendous. This is a great thing. I won the championship in basketball, and that's exactly what I wanted.
The win was celebrated not just by Loyola, but the entire city of Chicago. So Ireland proudly paraded their trophy around town, including a barbershop across from campus where 4 of the Iron Five weren't even allowed inside. As for Jerry Harkness, after graduating, he had a short-lived pro career in the ABA before returning to Chicago and finding work as a salesman on the north side, close to campus. Now, he was just a young black man trying to build a life.
I could see all of those people out there cheering as we won the national title. Then when it got time to just move, I could not get a place to stay. And they came up with all kind of excuses. I was being discriminated against. There was no doubt about it.
The story of the 63 Ramblers made me wonder, what was really different now? Did their accomplishments change anything? The answer is complicated, but their lasting effect on basketball is clear.
The 63 team changed the game, made it faster, more interesting, a lot more fun to watch, almost like a ballet.
It was the beginning of modern basketball.
That changed the landscape of college sports. We were able to work together with all this diversity and come out a winner. And then common sense would tell us, well, can't we do that in society as well?
One part of America was making changes.
Texas Western takes the first major sports title the school has ever won.
And the other part was not. I got involved in the civil rights movement after school. We had an obligation to do something, say something about how the situation was.
Sports has a way of tearing down barriers faster than the rest of society. And when athletes use their platform to demand justice, they can often turn their victories into something much bigger. But they can't do it alone.
The world of college basketball has lost a pioneer. Jerry Harkness was best known for the history he made as a Loyola Rambler. Harkness would go on to work for the United Way of Central Indiana. He helped start the Indiana Black Expo, and he was the first Black sportscaster on Indianapolis television. Jerry Harkness was 81 years old.
During the 1963 season, we see numerous stories being told, and the obvious one is a story about a team with 4 Black players, and they play well, and they win. And the story doesn't stop, because the story is not just about basketball. The story is about the worth of an athlete, the worth of a Black man, their place in society, and what they can demand.
It's just a tremendous honor for all the team members to be recognized. It's a chance to see the effect that you've had on some of the people that played, some of the Black players that we opened some doors for.
We are extremely proud of you. You represent the university and yourselves extremely well.
We try to do our best to just imitate like you guys and like what you guys have done.
The best we can do is say this is to be continued. It is a work in progress. It is a project that's not yet ended. To make our country one that's worthy of what these men went through.
The most important thing is that we keep telling the story. Looking back, you have a better understanding of why we are in the situation that we are in today.
One day, hopefully long from now, my time playing basketball will come to an end. But there will always be more work to do, more unwritten rules to break, more ways to make the world better for the next generation. To me, that's the inspiration I think we can all carry forward. That's the legacy of the 63 Ramblers.
Watch as San Jose State appears on the map. Oh my gosh. I just have to take a breath. Thank you, Ron, for being a part of this and sharing your story. Well, we've got time for a few questions. We definitely want to hear from you in the audience. So we're going to have just a kind of a brief conversation. Before we get into that, you guys had raffle tickets, I believe, and we got some prizes perhaps to give away. Javi is here. Aiden James, you want to come up? Or Alan? So we got some numbers. Grab your tickets. Grab your tickets real quick. My son is here, Aiden James Francique. He's going to draw a number. Come over here, honey. Yes. Just one. Yep. Yep. There's no name. We're just going to read the number. It's good. 426027. No. 027. Is it anybody's? Let's get another one. While you're grabbing, I'm going to throw this in the crowd, so be ready to catch. We got some stuff. 426007. No, did y'all leave? Okay. Come on. Keep grabbing. We're gonna get a winner here sometime. 426029. 029. Oh, we got one in the back. We got a little Institute swag. Give me one more. Institute swag. Jorge Castillo, name written on the back. So 426011. Go ahead. All right. Yes, you can throw a bracelet out in the audience. So we're going to ask Mr. Miller, if you wouldn't mind, either you can stay there or you can come on stage, whichever's comfortable. Yes. Thank you. So I want you guys to get your questions ready. We've got a couple of mics at the back of the room. We've got a few minutes here with Mr. Miller. So we are looking forward to some interaction from each and every one of you. Dr. Travis Boyce will be joining us on stage. That is Mr. Miller, Aiden, yes, who you saw on the screen. Awesome. Say, nice to meet you. Go ahead, go. You gonna stay on? Okay, we're gonna come on. He's got some questions too. He got to watch it last night. So we'll get you seated. Go with that. Oh, you wanna stand? Okay. Yep, make it work. So we got a couple of mics here. We'll have, we can just kind of move to the middle of the floor. Yeah. Got you here. Oh, okay. Well, you know what? I'll get out of your way. How about that? I'm in the way. I'm going to take the mic in the crowd. Let me try to get this in here. I might need Eric's help. Let's see. There we go. All right. So questions from the audience, and then I'll have Dr. Boyce go ahead and help too. Yeah. I'll go out to the floor.
Sure. So, yeah, let's take some questions. Any questions for Mr. Miller?
Well, thank you guys very much for having my daughters and myself here. It was, I've seen parts of it, and it was very interesting. I learned some new things tonight. And one of the things that I learned was some of the white guys on the team, like Chuck Woods and Jack Egan, said they had no idea of what it was like, of what we was going through. One of the things about 17, 18-year-olds in the 60s was we did not communicate as well as you guys do today. I'm amazed. We did a Zoom call. I think it was 4 of us and maybe 4 or 5 of the guys from the team. And they asked all kinds of questions about what it was like, the current team, what it was like in the 60s. And we spent 2 hours talking about it. And I was amazed at how well they understood everything. And a small example, Thanksgiving this year at one of my daughter's house, I was sitting in one room and I was listening to the conversation with all of my grandkids who are maybe 20 in that age, and the way they communicated is so different than the way we did in 1960. It's really impressive. And it tells me that, things will keep getting better, period. My daughter once asked me, I think, Michelle, she asked me when Floyd was killed in Minnesota, she said, Dad, do you ever get sick of this? Do you ever get tired of this? How come we have to always fight? Will things ever get better? And I said, yeah, it gets better. And the only thing I could think of was I said to her, my son-in-law, her husband, is a trained lawyer. He went for a job interview with BART, the BART system. And I told her 20 years ago, he wouldn't have gotten an interview. And 10 years ago, he would have got the interview and they would have said, maybe next time. Not only did he get the interview, but he beat out a couple of people who were retired from the FBI. So you say things do change. It's slow and it's hard, and you're going to always have to fight, period. You're going to have to always have to fight. And that's the one thing that I think my 79 years have taught me, that it's never over. It's never over. And the lesson, and the lesson from that, and I always tell people, it's basketball, sports. We were down by 15 points with 9 minutes to play against supposedly the best team in the country, and we won. So you don't quit. That's the difference. You just don't quit. You just keep going, and somehow you win. So I guess that's it. I'm finished. Sorry. I get carried away sometimes. Any questions about any part of the film or trips that we had or individual people who were portrayed in the film?
I want you to definitely ask your questions, and also just let you know, you guys have around your neck a lanyard, and on it is a card that says VIP because you're all VIPs to me, right? But with that, there's a QR code that goes to what we call an Adobe Spark page. It has some great information about the Loyola team, about Ron, and other things that you can begin to learn and study and grow. Yes.
So first of all, that was just an amazing film. I was actually sorry when it was over because I was so engrossed. But, there were a lot of sort of discussions in the film about your coach and, where did his sentiments really lie? And I'm just curious from the perspective of your team, did you ever have a chance to either talk to him about it or have you talked to each other about it? Because it feels like, he was just very human, like he really felt for you as people, but he might have been a bit insensitive to the situation of being a black man at that time. So I'm just sort of curious about what you think.
We've discussed that for years. There were periods of time where some of the members of the team refused to go back to reunions because of him. Example, Vic Rouse was one, and Rich Rochelle, the guy with the beard, was another who would not attend functions because they felt that Ireland had mistreated them or was not as sensitive to our needs as he should have been. It's a tough one, and I struggle with this one. And when they were doing the film, one of the things that Patrick said to me, the producer, was he said, I don't want to make him the villain because there's a lot of things there that says he did some things that were wrong. And he said, I don't want to make him a hero. So somewhere in is George Ireland. Me personally, I got along well with him. I think because he was close to my mother, and he would call her, he would call her, could I have some water, honey? He would call her and talk about recruiting and other things. So I was kind of always, you know, I never resented him, but, you know, I knew he wasn't totally on our side. And I think they kind of portrayed that in the movies. I can tell you the letter thing went back and forth. We went back and forth with those letters for a couple of months. I had a relationship, friendly relationship with his daughter, Judy, who was in the film. And they asked me to call and talk to her. I called her. I spent an hour on the phone trying to tell her, you know, the letters and so on and so on. She turned it over to her grandson. I spent hours on the phone, you know, trying to get letters. We never verified any of the letters except for one. So, and he was the kind of guy who, I guess the expression is he was a legend in his own mind. I mean, totally was. So he's still, to this day, as I said, and I've known him for 60 years, I'm still not sure of who he was. Okay? I mean, those trips that we went to Houston, that was ridiculous. And him taking us to, he told us, about 4 hours before we were to leave to go to New Orleans, that we were going to have to stay in separate places. So Jerry said, Jerry truly was a leader too. He was like 2 years, Hawkins was 2 years older than the rest of us. And we're all kind of like, even the white guys, Jack and Chuck, they'd all kind of like pull back, and Jerry would do most of the talking. And you know, I love Jerry. I really miss Jerry. You know, he passed away last September, and you know, I'd known him for 60 years, and he lived in Indianapolis, and I'm on the West Coast, and we would talk once or twice a month. So, but anyway, he told us about 4 hours before we were to leave that we were staying separate places. So the black guys, all of us got together and said, well, we got to go talk to him about it. So we go in and we talk to him about it. He basically breaks down in tears, apologizing. You know, saying, oh, I didn't know it was going to happen. I'm sorry, this will never happen again. He says, but I just need you to play this one game. And we played the one game. So, so I don't know what kind of guy he was. So, but remember this, too, when you're 17, 18, in 1963, 64, 65, it is a completely different world, completely different. Sometimes when I think about it as a great time because the country was coming alive. You know, I'm a guy who loves history, political science, and all those things. And I always thought about this country as two great periods. That one was the Great Depression, and the second one was the 60s, when the social conscience of the country just like started to pop. I mean, nowhere near it is now, but still. I mean, remember we came out of the 50s, came out of the, where it was, everything was like, you know, just don't say anything, don't rock the boat. And we had all this energy, you know, with the 60s. And I personally, it was a great period. So.
Looks like we got another question. Come on. Yeah. This microphone. If it doesn't work, I got one for you.
Hello. Okay. I actually have a couple. My first one was like, I can't imagine like all you had to go through playing there, and it's just kind of like, what was your kind of mindset? Because I know there was at times you probably was like, forget this, I don't want to go through this, and it's just like, I know as some people they would probably just give up, but you guys just kept pushing through. So it was kind of like, how would you motivate yourself to keep going and keep pushing through everything?
See, what you're saying now is the difference between 1960s and today. You would not have tolerated what we went through. You would have been very, very vocal. In 1960, we were not vocal. We were quiet. Remember, the heroes to us, to me in those days, were people, not what we did, not a basketball game, but people like John Lewis, who got on a bus in Chicago and goes into Mississippi and Alabama, knowing when he gets off the bus, someone's going to beat the hell out of him. I mean, and he can't fight back. That's a hero. Those guys were the brave ones. And people like you now, you would not have tolerated, which is excellent, what we went through in the 60s. It's the only way I can put it. My grandkids would not have tolerated, right? Right. One of them would take it. So, but by the same token, and we've discussed this. In fact, I discussed it with her and her husband a couple of weeks ago. That and there was a line in there where I said that it wasn't that bad, or something like that. Where I said, we kind of knew our place. That sounds terrible. It does sound. It sounds weak, and I'm going to let someone take advantage of me. That's not what I mean by it at all. It's just that you knew how to survive. You know what I mean? But people like John Lewis, people like my grandparents who were sharecroppers. Those are, to me, the people. Those are the ones that got us this far. And then to hear a voice like yours that wanted to know how I felt about it, it was bad. It was bad. But again, in Chicago, which was a segregated city, and it still is in a lot of ways. It wasn't good, but it wasn't. There's a couple of lines in there where Rich says, "We fear for our life." Oh, that was in Houston. Well, he may be right about that, but in Chicago, when Martin Luther King came to Chicago in 67, for fair housing, and they were talking about a place called Marquette Park, where they had the signs, "No blacks ever." It was really bad. We were involved in that. Jerry and all of us were involved in those demonstrations in those days. And that was 67 it was, in 66 that summer. That's when you knew how tough it was. That's when you knew how tough it was. And Jerry, as Jerry said, he graduated from Loyola, went off to New York, came back about a year later, couldn't get an apartment, a block from campus, where his picture's in the Hall of Fame, but he couldn't get an apartment because he was black. So, you know this stuff. I don't want to talk about, you know all of that kind of stuff still, but, it just don't lose your voice and don't accept it. Just don't accept it.
Thank you for your question. Yes, you can. I'll give you this too for asking questions.
Oh, and then did you guys still face stuff after the championship, months or years after? Because I know you guys still got to love after, but was there still hatred in some parts and stuff like that?
You mean for us?
Yeah,
No, we were pretty well heroes around Loyola to this day. I mean, we see they tried. I was telling my daughter Nicole coming down. I said I remember saying about 25 years ago at one of our reunions that I said, I hope that when we're 70 and 80, they won't trot us out with our canes and our false teeth and all that stuff. And here I am, so still representing Loyola. It's the same, enough things don't change. So, and a few years ago, they did one of the nicest things that they did was we had a reunion with the guys from Mississippi State at Loyola. And to talk to them was good. Now, Jerry Harkness became friends with a lot of them. In fact, when Dan Gold died, he was the captain of the Mississippi State team. Jerry was at his funeral, and he sat with the family and all that. So they became pretty close. But Loyola, and then Jesse Jackson presented awards for us. And then we went to, because Obama was from Chicago, of course, we get tour the White House, meet the president, all that kind of stuff. So for me, it was some benefits. I mean, that was one of my major benefits. But, Loyola, they tried us out quite a bit. So,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Thank you for your question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I know we have a couple more, but I just want to read real quick for you all, just to know how good this man was. So, accolades. Starter on Loyola's 1963 NCAA championship team. One of the top scorers in program history with 1,299 points for his career. As a junior in 1962, he tallied 13.3 points and 5.4 rebounds per game to help the Ramblers win the NCAA title. During his senior season in 1963-64, he bumped his scoring average to 21.9 points per game. Okay, I'm just saying. We're dealing with the real here, right? Helped the Ramblers to 3 postseason appearances in his career. During the 1962 NIT, led the Ramblers with 21.3 points per game. Also gathered 545 rebounds in his career. And your jersey, as you said, the number 42 is now retired at Loyola. So just wanted to read some of those stats so you guys knew what we have in our presence.
You know, the thing about it is over the last 60 years, I've lied so much that I have no idea if that's true or not. So I just my grandson asked me, "Granddad, how good were you really?" And I said, "I have no idea. I said, I can tell you stories, but I have no idea really." So thank you.
You're welcome. We've got another question. Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Akila. I'm curious to know your thoughts on like how you see athletes, if you see at all their responsibility to like social movements today. Like you all had little choice to be part of a movement for civil rights, right? Like and against racism. You didn't have much of a choice because it was everywhere you went. Today, athletes, people in general, but definitely athletes have a choice whether to lean in or not, to speak up, be present. What do you see any responsibility or any any responsibility for athletes today to kind of use the platform that they do have to use their voice?
Yeah. Well, for me, that's easy. I think they totally have a responsibility. I think it's, I admire people, like LeBron and Steph and Curry and people like that who speak up or who are involved. I think it's absolutely important and critical that they be involved going forward. In fact, I think it's a sin if they're not involved. It's a selfishness if they're not involved. I think you owe that to your community. I really do. I mean, during that period between 60, 64, none of us on Loyola were actively involved, okay? When we all finished, for some reason, we became involved. In 65, 66, Jack was involved, who until he went to Loyola and became friends with, he became very close to Les Hunter when it was over. When we had finished playing, they became very close. And Jack had never been involved before. Jack was involved. And Chuck Woods was from Wisconsin, and he was the one who made a point of saying he didn't know what we were going through. He became involved back in Wisconsin. But when we were, quote, student athletes, we were not actively involved. But after, we had the war going on, we had civil rights, and we all were involved. So.
Is there a question from someone here at first? I thought. So maybe I can address a question too. So I don't want to assume, but given this early period, 1960s, we see this desegregation of college sports. Was there a kinship of opposing teams who had black players? Was there friendships made on the court or off the court? And can you speak to that?
Yeah. I can make it very personal with us in Mississippi State. When Jerry became friends with them, and I can tell you a story of, I think it was, I was never sure which one it was. One of the players' granddaughter came to me in Chicago at one of the reunions. And this was, I think it was in 2014. And she said, Mr. Miller, I want to tell you a story. And she said, my grandfather was so-and-so on the Mississippi State team. And his family was very racist, redneck, very, very racist. And his family was very upset with him for playing in the game against you guys. And she said that one of her friends, and I think she said the 3rd or 4th grade, a black kid, schools were integrated, was having a party. And she wanted to go, didn't want to go because it was a black kid. And her father said, you have to go because she's your friend. And she went. And could I sit down for a minute? I'm feeling a little weak.
You got it. You okay? You sure?
So anyway, he said, if she's a friend of yours, you go to the party. And she said, if it wasn't for you guys, I would not have gone to the party. And this girl is still a friend of hers today. So that's personal. So.
Any more questions from the audience? Yes. Emma. Yes. Emma Green from the block. Take 2 more. This one.
I don't know if you can see me, but I'm right over here. Quick question for you. Oftentimes I have seen either historically or on our campus coalitions built amongst student athletes and our student organizations, those internal to campus or external. So I guess I'm wondering, are there any stories or memories you have of Black Student Unions, SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or historically Black Greeks, right, on college campuses? Were there any coalitions that you saw built amongst players or other students who were trying to leverage your voices or just in support, right, of what you all were doing on the court? Can you speak to that? Any stories you might share?
Not really. Remember, I'm going to say that SNCC came about around 1965, so we had finished. And Loyola is a small Jesuit school that did not have many blacks. And what Rich was talking about with the fraternities is they would want us to go to fraternity parties, always invite us, but we could not be members. We could be honorary members, but we could not be members, which is, there's a lot of things I could say about some of that, but keep in mind that we personally, how we got through it
was that we had our own cliques. I'll give you an example. I had a couple of guys who I'm still friends with in Florida now, in Chicago now, and I talk to one or two of them every month. We still talk. They helped me through school. I was a little different. I didn't like the normal thing. I was not the big rah-rah guy. When we won the championship and we came back to the school and the school was going nuts, I could not get away. You know, I remember walking back from the student union to my room, and there's a mob of people. And the first thing I did was, when I got to my room, was I went to a phone and I called a friend of mine and I said, Freddie, what are you doing? And he said, how come you're not here? He said, too many people. And I said, could you pick me up? He had a car. I said, could you pick me up and let's go buy some hot dogs? I wanted to get away from it. That was not my thing. And so it was like my private clique. I always said that these guys got me through school. They used to tell me stories like, Miller, you're not studying enough. You're not doing, you know, the difference between a C and a B is a half hour. Yeah, that's what they should tell me that all the time, you know. You're not studying enough. And they would be at all the games. If I had a good game, they would say, oh, you're not that good. You know, and if I had a bad game, they'd say, you'll be better next time. You know, I always tell people that they got me through school because they kept pushing me. And they were not basketball players. These guys were nerds. And I mean the worst nerd. You know, the guy would hit himself in the head with a basketball. I mean, these guys were really bad. I mean, so, you know, hear the expression, a guy shot a brick? Well, these guys would shoot condominiums. That's how bad they were. They could not. But you know, we were all very close, and I love those guys. And now when my phone rings, I pick it up, and the guy says, "Hey, Ronnie." No one calls me Ronnie but these guys. You know, it's Ron or something, and then they say, "Ronnie, what are you doing?" You know, so it was for us. I think. And I always tell people at Loyola this, I thank Loyola for giving me and us an opportunity more than anything else, okay? Because without that scholarship to Loyola, my dream job was working in the post office, making $100 a week. So, I mean, I go to Loyola and it's a different world. Everything opens up. So I really thank them for that, for just giving the opportunity. And one of my sons once asked me the same thing. He said, Dad, he said, I know what the civil rights stuff was all about. I understand all of that. I know all of that. He says, but down deep, what is the struggle? And you know, I said, and I wasn't sure. And then I said, you know what, John? The struggle is the opportunity. All you want is an opportunity. You know, you can fail. Let me fail. That's okay. I don't mind that. But if you don't give me the opportunity, I don't have a chance. And to me, Loyola gave us, all of us, a chance. Vic Rouse, who passed away in 1999 of heart failure, he ended up with a master's and a doctorate. And he was a guy from Nashville, Tennessee. Right. Jack Egan is a lawyer in Chicago, or was it just retired? So, or he just says, I'm not retired, I just don't want any cases. So, and then Rochelle, Richard, the guy with the beard, ended up being school superintendent for Evanston, Illinois. Wow. So Chuck Wood was also a superintendent in Wisconsin. Dan Connaughton, another guy, was a lawyer. I ended up with a master's in business from Loyola. And all of this was because of Loyola giving us an opportunity. And the best thing that came out of winning the championship, they told anyone on the team, if you wanted to stay in school and get an advanced degree, we'll cover it. So I got a free education. That's all I can say. So what I had to go through to get it, it was worth it. It totally was worth it. So.
Great. Well, I want to wrap up. I think I'm going to do one more question, but thank you all again for being here. My final question to you is we've got students here, we've got student athletes, we've got coaches, we've got faculty, we've got staff. What is sort of a final message you want to leave for all of these individuals present today about your experience, the film, present day, issues when we talk about race relations? And then, of course, you shared a lot about just opportunity. What are some parting words that we can kind of go with?
I just think don't give up on what you think is possible. I mean, it's possible. Things, today is one thing, and to give yourself an opportunity to succeed. Everything is not about just tonight, today, it's about tomorrow. So you want to put yourself in a position to do well tomorrow. And how do you do that? Just by preparing, and don't give up. I'm a strong believer in don't give up. I mean, my daughter will tell you, the one with the red hair will tell you. and it's one of my things, and she'll say, Dad, what are we going to do? And I say, I don't know, we'll work it out. We'll work it out. And 99% of the time, we do work it out. So just don't give up on your dreams, that's all. And fight for them. And please be vocal. Please be vocal. And my family, I don't have to worry about that. So, and thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Big round of applause. We've got a little something that we want to share with you. Let me go and get it. I got it. So on behalf of the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change, we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for being present. Thank you again from our partners, the Department of African American Studies, Jamal Williams with our Transforming Communities. You have been a pleasure to us. And so we've got a few goodies in here from the Institute. Some shirts.
Oh, good.
Some water bottles.
Oh, good.
Some chocolate.
Okay.
Yes. But thank you so much.
Thank you very
We
much.
greatly appreciate it. The round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.